Well, guys, guess what? Hickorycroft Farm is back, and we are back with Paul from
Guten Gardening, everybody.
and he says Hickorycroft needs to get back to work. So it is time. We're going to do a garden tour, and we're going to wow you with everything that's not happening on the farm right now.
Well, you can tell compared to the opening to this video, it's a different day. It was raining a lot, and we just took the opportunity to visit with the Guten Garden family, and just like Tony the Tiger says, they're great. So if you haven't checked them out, definitely go and check them out now. We'll link them up here or wherever.
Not till the end of the video.
Well, but yes, go check them out after the end of the video, because what we're about to do is, after months of absence from YouTube, we are looking at the garden. And as you can see from these Jerusalem artichokes behind me, there is a lot going on in here. So we're going to start this tour with a change. I am standing in our sort of original garden, our original in-ground tilled space. And as I pan around here, you're going to see, again, this looks like it's nothing but weeds. But we made a decision, and the decision was that this garden is going to switch from being an in-ground garden to, like the beds behind me, a raised bed garden. And we've built 4 sort of low raised beds that we did this late, so we haven't actually got them filled with soil, but we are planting them with potatoes, growing potatoes I should say, in a Ruth Stout method. So far so good. These potatoes are doing well. We do have to get some more mulch on them, but we have lots of mulch in the barn, so that's not too big of a problem. But this is not as exciting as what's going on in the raised beds. So before I go over to the raised beds, we stopped at the garlic patch, which is doing amazing and is really far ahead this year. It's got to be at least 2 weeks ahead of what we would expect. We've already harvested scapes. We've obviously missed a few scapes, but all in all, this part of the garden, which is still in ground, is doing really well. So we're definitely looking forward to what we hope will be a fantastic garlic harvest a little later this year. So as we walk into the raised bed part of the garden, you will see that we actually have grapes finally doing decent. These plants are looking fairly good, although the Japanese beetles have returned. As you can see, still some damage kind of ongoing at the moment. The beetles are voracious when they want to be. So though the grapes behind me have taken a little bit of a beating, and though we did actually have some flowers, the beetles have stripped what was there. Unfortunately, it is what it is for them this year, but our beans are doing amazing. This is our Neckar Golds, or yellow beans, pole beans, and they are loaded with flowers. So although we haven't had any beans just yet, they are well on their way to produce. Behind these beans, we have some, not all, of our rutabagas. Again, these were planted a little while ago, and you can tell from the foliage in the raised bed, they're doing quite well. Beside them, and you can barely see it, is our strawberries. We had a few strawberries survive the winter, didn't produce too much, but behind them is something that did amazing this year, and that is our cherry bell radishes. We've never been particularly great at growing radishes, and we've never really been particularly big fans of radishes. And I don't know if I can get in here to see them. It's pretty dark. We have let these ones continue to grow, but the spring has been amazing for radishes, and we've actually made the decision to let some of these go to seed so that we can kind of keep going with radishes. And still kind of under the protective cover to keep cats and chickens from digging them up, we have some more slightly younger rutabagas. And behind that, we have an archway or a trellis of noodle beans, which are doing pretty well. The one thing about the garden right now is we haven't actually really hit that peak of production. Although I will say a lot of things are a little earlier, roughly 2 weeks if I had to guess. We still have a ways to go, but it's certainly looking promising as far as what might be produced here. Lettuce of multiple varieties has been fantastic. This is one of the crops that we actually have been eating quite a bit out of the garden. And while lettuce doesn't make up a lot of bulk, it is exceptionally good, healthy, and tasty to have in the garden, especially in the spring when there isn't a lot of other things coming in from the garden. In this garden and the one beside it, we have a bit of an experiment. This is our black sesame. We grew this in 2023 as a bit of an experiment, and it actually worked. It seemed promising. So this year We managed to get them all planted a little early from starts compared to last year, and hopefully they'll do a little better in here. Although as you can see, we need to do a little bit of weeding. You're going to notice a theme here for a second because I'm about to hit another trellis, and as you can see, that trellis is full of beans. These are Bama's beans, and they have done amazing so far. They've almost filled the trellis, which is pretty impressive considering we're, I guess, now halfway into July, but there will be beans very soon coming from these. For anybody who may be new to the channel, we made a conscious decision a few years ago to switch to basically only growing pole bean type beans. We like a lot of the bush bean types, but we find because we want to try to get some of the dry beans as well as those sort of green or yellow, those sort of snap beans, we find these pole bean varieties a better use of space, but also better in terms of we can actually get a dry bean harvest off them. Cucumbers have not been a strong point for us since moving to this property. But as you can see here, these lemon cucumbers, which are a variety that we discovered last year and decided we needed to grow because we love them, they're doing amazing, loaded with flowers, and with any luck we will have some fruit here very soon. The kale and other miscellaneous brassicas that are growing in front of the cucumbers, however, are not doing so well. There is a little bit of insect damage on some of these cabbage whites, which cabbage whites have not been super terrible this year. But I think the big problem is we didn't expect these cucumbers to spread quite as vigorously and as fast as they did. And it's just kind of affecting these plants. But most of these kale plants will probably survive until the cucumbers are long gone. So we'll just sort of see what happens in the near future. So this is one that we're actually pretty proud of. This is our rosemary plant. I think this is now the third summer we've had it. We've definitely overwintered it twice, I believe. Anyways, it's still alive. It's still doing amazing. And all we had to do this past winter was put it into the porch. And I think there was 1 week of the year where we had to bring it into the house. And it's doing really well. Of course, we're really fond of the blue barrel sort of method of raising vegetables and herbs. And even just scanning over this, you can see that everything that's planted in here is doing amazing this year. So we have a lot going on in here. We're using these barrels for our sweet potatoes, which if anybody followed along with us last year, probably remembers we didn't actually grow them. We had a great harvest in 2022, and then we just didn't get that far in 2023. But those tubers stayed in good shape, and we managed to get quite a few slips off them this year. So looking forward to a sweet potato harvest in the upcoming months. We've continued to grow parsley in these beds. They do really well for us. We can't seem to overwinter them in the blue barrels, but they grow really well for the summer months. We've actually started growing lemongrass again as kind of an outdoor annual, with some plans to grow some in the house as well. Stay tuned for more on that. Probably the two most interesting or I don't know, biggest things that we're doing in these beds this year are beets and stevia. For anybody that's been following along on our Pantry Living channel, you'll know that we're changing the way we eat, and the research we've done into that in the spring, which is part of the reason for the absence on posting on this channel, has affected what we're growing, both physically what species we're growing, but also quantities. And beets, and this one is our cylindrical beets, we also have some Detroit Reds, is a big change for us. So at the moment, we are in a bit of a trial between the cylindrical beets, as I kind of come in here a bit, and the Detroit Reds. And I think at the moment, the cylindricals may actually be winning, although we haven't completed that trial. So for us, the beets are definitely becoming a bigger item in the garden, and we've made a conscious decision, basically trying to eat a more diabetic friendly diet, to cut out the sugar beets. And that has opened up basically a huge can of worms to figure out which one of these red beets do we want to grow in a big way. The nice part of it is, and where these barrels work nice, is the beets, when you're growing them not for seed but for eating, are a relatively quick turnaround crop. And so many of these beets are almost getting to that point that I'm going to say probably within the next month we're going to start harvesting, if not before then.
So we already have 3 barrels of really doing well Stevia, and we've got more to plant so that we have a bit later crop that we might be able to move into the greenhouse. But as you're seeing on Pantry Living, that change in diet is all hinging on Stevia for us as a sweetener. So that's why we're going into mass production.
And on the topic of blue barrels and growing things in blue barrels, as I mentioned, we have basically kind of fallen in love with, I guess, growing radishes. And these barrels, which I modified a couple of years ago, I can actually put the video link, I will find it. I modified these to grow celery and onions. And while it did work, it wasn't a stellar experiment. We got produce out of it, but I think in both cases they did better in other raised beds or in the ground. But because of the way these are constructed, it's looking like, even with a bit warmer temperatures, they're going to work really well for radishes. So stay tuned for that. Somebody's enjoying the garden space at the moment. I'm not 100% sure what you're checking out, but she's got a good perch above the lettuce plants. Right, Licorice? She's ignoring me. And what Hickorycroft garden tour is complete without squash? This is a brand new bed. We built it last year and never used it, never filled it. So in our sort of time off from YouTube, we filled it with manure and planted it with yellow crookneck summer squash. And I think the results are kind of sitting right before us there. They're doing amazing.
And we have a video on how we put the manure in this bed and used what we had here on the farm. So we'll link that above.
This little bed is a little worse for wear, but it is a bed that was all volunteers in the case of the lettuce and kale. But the one that's really, I guess, exciting for us is the elephant garlic. So this is a mix of elephant garlic that came to us from Amanda and Crucy. It's been in the bed for a couple of years. I think we may actually get some decent sized bulbs to separate for next year, so we shall see how this goes. Sort of on the other end of this bed, we have more beets. These are younger beets, and behind them we actually have some peppers. I'm not going to get into the peppers too much right now because we have some in another garden that are a little easier to see, but judging from all the foliage, it looks like everything's doing really well. Something that I'm really excited about, and we actually planted these last fall at about the same time as our garlic, is these St. Anne shallots. We first saw these on Mallory's channel, Quebec Homestead, and they looked amazing. And we've never been really good at growing onions, and they looked like one of a double-pronged solution to allow us to produce onions in the garden. We were lucky enough, Darren from Thorhaven Farm gave us a few to try, and we planted them. And so far, they look like they're doing amazing. In fact, I think some of them may have even multiplied, which is awesome because I will admit they were a bit smaller and we didn't know what was going to happen. So I'm looking really forward to this harvest, which is probably coming a little sooner than later. And I think this is going to be a solution for us. So stay tuned and we'll see how this works out. So this bed is sort of in a bit of transition right now. We had a lot of lettuce in here, and much of that lettuce has been harvested and we've consumed it already. We do have a few plants that are going to seed, but we also have some bok choy that is going to seed on the other side of the garden, which we're really excited about because we like bok choy, but we've never been really great at growing it. And this year it's actually worked, so it may be something viable. The other thing that's in here is our peppers. These are our Tolly Sweet Italian frying peppers. So this is the main crop pepper that we've decided to grow just to simplify so we don't have to worry about crossing and all that other stuff. And it already has peppers on it. These plants were planted a little bit early, but it's amazing what they already have on them. So these peppers we actually planted out at the end of April. And the reason why we did that, that's really, really early and really dicey because where we are, we could get a frost after that date. But in 2024, we didn't. But these plants were planted under this sort of cover where we could put plastic over them if we were going to get a frost in the forecast. But it's amazing to me that we already are the middle of July and we've already got fairly fully formed peppers growing on these pepper plants. These sweet Italian frying peppers are definitely a good pepper if you're in a climate similar to us. So we're looking at onions again, and these are Egyptian walking onions. So this is our other half of our double-pronged solution to try to produce more onions on the homestead. These I actually got from my friend Adam very, very recently, and they're doing awesome. But wait until I show you what I'm going to show you next. So take a look at this. This patch is growing like mad. This is a really small little patch that came from a little clump that I got from my friend Cassie. And honestly, all we've done is propagate it once, and you can see for yourself the potential for multiplication that's going on here. We will be planting a bigger area of these in 2024. And right next to them, although it's not food, is one of my favorite plants in the garden, our prickly pear cactus. And Dave, it is doing amazing. It's actually flowered twice. You can see there's a bloom on it right there. And honestly, this plant is doing awesome here. We need to do a little bit of weeding, but I truthfully have been weeding it multiple times this year, but it's doing great.
I'm pretty sure blooming cactuses is a sign of a happy cactus. This has one active one. It's got 3 more coming, and it's already had 8 blossoms prior to this year. I am loving this cactus. I honestly thought we had killed it. Chris promised me it was still alive. Don't pull it out. Don't do anything. And it is just looking incredible and has expanded to almost triple the size. So thank you so much, Dave.
So we're probably going to end this part 1 of the garden tour here because unfortunately we're starting to lose daylight. We still have some chores to do, and we don't really want to show you the rest of our gardens in the dark. But I kind of have a couple of thoughts kind of going through this and just looking back on where we've been and where we've gotten to. One, it's great to grow a lot of food, but like the cactus, it's nice to have things that are just nice or enjoyable or you like having, and that is definitely one of those things. We love having that in the garden, and it's pretty awesome when it flowers, to be honest. And kind of on top of that too, you've noticed a bit of a theme. We've been fortunate with a lot of generosity from people. A lot of the things that we have going and a lot of the things that we've shown in this video, we've been fortunate enough to get from others in the homesteading and gardening community, and I think that's a huge positive to the gardening and homesteading community, that there's that opportunity to share and pass along things. I thought of one other thing though before we actually officially end this first half of our garden tour. So I'm going to take you over to another raised bed that's going to look totally barren, but I'm super excited about. Pardon the fading light, which really emphasizes that we're coming to an end here, but this barren looking wood chip and hay full raised bed is full of spawn from our wine cap mushrooms. So yes folks, I finally got organized and finally got some spawn and actually got it planted. And while it doesn't look like much now, I'm really excited to see what happens with this bed, because everything I read and everybody I've talked to says the wine caps are very prolific and we should have a pretty big bed of them. So this concludes sort of part 1, or maybe better put, a tour of our raised bed garden. Thanks for following along with us, and thanks for being patient with us in having not produced anything in the last few months. But stay tuned, because we're going to take you over to our in-ground gardens and some of our sort of fruit production and just show you how that's doing. So thanks for following along, and we will catch you later.